Alright, what's up, YouTube? There's a lot I want to speak on this video, okay? Hopefully I can cover it all in this one shot, one take, but hopefully I can remember 90% of, at least 90% of what I wanted to speak on in this video. Alright, so you see the title, alright? Undisputed. Becoming undisputed. We all fans, we want undisputed. We want there to be one champion, not all of these guys holding titles. We will never know who's truly the best in each division because undisputed is just not common. You know, it's been a while since we had the last. Who was the last undisputed champ? Was it Jermaine Taylor? You know, was it Zab Judah? It's been a while, you know, maybe not that long, but it's been a while, okay? And we all want it. We all want it. You know, historically, you know, if you've been boxing fans for a long time and you grew up watching it like I did, you will understand why we all want it as fans. But I don't think we're going to get it. You know, I think it's just, it's a different, boxing is a different culture. It's a different time. Things are different now. You know, it's not as popular as it once was. Regardless of certain fighters being popular, more popular than others. You have Canelo, you got Anthony Joshua, you know, it's still not enough, okay? There's still a lot of people that do not know who Anthony Joshua is, especially here in the USA. A lot of people don't know who he is. Still, even with the Klitschko fight, a lot of people just never heard of him before, okay? Canelo is another guy that, you know, people know about. Is that guy that lost to Floyd Mayweather. A lot of people feel that way. I'm not saying that everybody has to know who these guys are for them to be famous. I'm not saying that at all. But compared to other sports, okay, the superstars in this sport are not as big as the superstars in other sports like soccer, like basketball, like football, you know, American football, you know. It's just not that way, all right? And becoming undisputed now, it's hard for many reasons to become undisputed. And I'm gonna name a list, a whole bunch of different reasons why. And, you know, I'm gonna try to give examples, as many examples as I can, or at least I can remember. Let's get started. Now, the reason why I made this video, the reason what inspired me to make this video is just the news from the last couple of days. All right. Joshua, you know, stops Klitschko a couple weeks ago. Everybody's talking about him. Everybody wants this fight with him, you know, and he has a ton of different options. Now he's gonna have a headache. This is when the politics really playing. When you're that top guy, this is when the politics really play a heavy role in boxing, because you have the sanctioning bodies you got to worry about. You got the rematch clauses, all right? You have the mandatories, and you have all these unification matches you can make, all right? And this is going to play a role. Now we think it's so easy for us, the guys that's sitting on the outside, the fans, we think it's so easy for these fights to be made, but they can't be made so easily. And I'm gonna explain why. And this is not about me making excuses. This is just fact, because I'm starting to realize, if you look at every fighter that's unified recently, or had 3 titles recently, or have them now, holding them, why are they not fighting that 4th title holder? Why is it not happening? You know, and plus, why is it as easy as it used to be? And I'm going to try to break all of that down in this video as much as I can remember, at least, all right? Because I could go really deep into this, and this could be, I could speak hours about this. We could all speak on hours, for hours about this, okay? But let's just start from the heavyweight division right now and where it's currently at, all right? Joshua beats Klitschko, okay? You know, he wins. He's unified now, okay? I think they fought for the vacant WBA title, all right? Joshua was an IBF champ before, okay? He had the IBF, which was a vacant title that Charles Martin won. Joshua beats Charles Martin, and now he holds the WBA title by beating Klitschko. So he's unified, all right? Now, this is the thing. This is the problem here, right? For both titles that he holds, all right, he has mandatories, all right? Over there in the IBF, I believe Pulev is his mandatory. And at the WBA now, we have King Kong, all right, Luis Ortiz, who's been patiently waiting for his big shot. He's been waiting for a big shot. He's been waiting for a title fight, and he's been waiting to fight a big name. But nobody wants to fight him. Let's admit that. For the people that want to be on Joshua's side, want to be on Wilder's side, want to be on Fury's side, whatever, Luis Ortiz has been trying to get his shot, all right? But he doesn't have the same fan base. You don't see anywhere that there are guys that are just calling for Luis Ortiz to get a shot. He's a guy that's avoided, all right? No one, you know, he doesn't have the huge fan base like he's a Cuban heavyweight. You know, he doesn't have this huge fan base like a lot of other fighters do, like Joshua do, like Klitschko's do, like Wilder do. He just doesn't have it, like Fury does. He doesn't have that huge fan base, but we could all recognize that this guy is at least dangerous. Regardless of who you think can beat him, we all recognize that this guy is dangerous, you know, because he has some talent there. He has experience, all right? He has a knockout power, okay? And no one wants to fight him. No one wants to fight him, okay? No one wants to. No one is going to come out and say, I'll fight that guy, unless it's another fighter on the come up. You know, no one wants to fight this guy. Nobody's going to say, none of the top fighters going to call out Luis Ortiz, say, that's my next match. Guys are not going to fight him unless they are forced to fight him. And they'll use any excuse in the book. Oh, because he failed drug tests before. Oh, he hasn't fought nobody. Oh, they're going to make any kind of excuse not to fight this guy. You know, no one wants to fight him. And I don't really blame them, because he's dangerous. He's extremely dangerous, if not the most dangerous guy in the heavyweight division. But he doesn't have anything valuable. You know, people will respect the win, but nobody knows who he is like that, except the diehards. They don't know who he is like that. All right, he's not bringing any money. He's always used to see him fighting on the undercard of fights. You know, I mean, he's fought HBO a couple times, but you know, he's been bouncing around with promoters, and it seems like every time he moves to another promoter, he's fighting on undercards again. You know, before he was with Golden Boy. Golden Boy was pushing him heavy. And then things didn't work out with Golden Boy. He goes to Eddie Hearn. Then things didn't work out with him. Now he's with Al Heyman, and he's getting promoted by, I don't even know, you know? But yo, he is a mandatory for one of Joshua's belts. He is a mandatory, and Joshua had Pulev. And then he has this rematch clause, you know, which you gotta understand. And this is what's ruining everything right now. Because if you wanna fight with a big name, or the guy, you know, with a big name, or the guy with the reputation, or the guy with the titles, or the guy that's going to bring you money, you're going to have to sign that rematch clause. They want just in case, whether it was Joshua that was pushing it, or Klitschko, it doesn't matter. These guys, once you reach a certain level, they're going to push hard for that rematch clause. You know why? Because if they screw up and the fight doesn't go the way that most people plan, they want to protect themselves, and they want to give them that second opportunity to rematch just in case. The rematch clause is a just in case. You know, if they lose fairly, they can come back, do a rematch. You know, they could do whatever, but that's why the rematch clause is there, because you are going to be obligated to fight me next if shit doesn't go my way. That's what it's for. You know, or sometimes we could get a classic match, and sometimes we just get a rematch, or we might get Klitschko again. But the problem is, let's not act like this fight wasn't going to happen between Joshua and Klitschko if one of them didn't sign a rematch clause. And the problem with the rematch clause is, if the sanctioning bodies want that second fight, I'm sorry, if the sanctioning bodies want you to fight the mandatories, you know what it is? I'm parking, and you know how it is when you're parking, you gotta concentrate, right? But anyway, the sanctioning bodies want you to fight your mandatory. You know, they don't really care about the contracts you signed in order to make a fight. All right, sometimes they'll work with you, and that's another thing with the sanctioning bodies that's so messed up, is because they're willing to bend the rules depending on who it is and what time period of that fight it is. You know, they're willing to bend the rules. We see what happened with the WBC and Canelo and Cotto. You know, Cotto wins the title. Golovkin is waiting to be, you know, Golovkin had to sit and wait for like 3 or 4 fights in order for him to get his WBC shot, even though he was a mandatory. You know, these guys are willing to bend the rules for certain fighters. And that's what happened with Cotto. Cotto loses to Canelo. Canelo goes and fight Amir Khan. Golovkin is still waiting. And then they finally stripped Canelo of the title because Canelo just didn't want. And Canelo had, what, 2 more fights since then. You know, he's just now announcing that he's fighting Triple G. So these are examples that I'm giving you of how the sanctioning body work. You know, because they're willing to bend their own rules, you know, and you just, it's just hard because you want that Klitschko fight. Joshua, it worked well for him. Besides the fact that he got knocked down and he was a little, his game was exploited a little bit. You know, guys that did fear him now realize that he's beatable, he's vulnerable, he's not invincible. You know, he has 18 before going into the Klitschko fight, and people wanted to fight him, but not too sure, you know, because we don't know how good this kid really is. He's still really good, but we can see that he's still learning, he's still growing, he's still young in his career, and he still makes mistakes. So guys want to beat him now more than ever. All right. So let's go back into it. Let me start really talking about why becoming undisputed is not going to work. Because now that he has this clean rematch clause, he's not going to be able to fight both mandatories. Maybe the WBA will give him a pass and not fight Luis Ortiz, but Ortiz is already threatening to sue. Okay, so most likely he's going to have to give up that belt. If the IBF is willing to give him a pass by not fighting Pulev right now, then maybe he can hold one of the title, at least one. You know, I don't know if they're threatening. I don't know how serious they are about making Joshua fight Pulev. They don't see as serious as the WBA is right now. But there's a chance that if Klitschko wants the rematch, okay, if he wants the rematch immediately, then he can't fight neither one of those guys, and he might get stripped, okay? How do you become undisputed? Now, there's one way you can be undisputed and fight other champions is by having more unification matches. So he can go on and fight maybe a Wilder or a Parker, because I think that's the only way you can get out of fighting one of your mandatories is if you go into a unification match. But the problem is, once you sign that rematch clause and Klitschko wants to fight you and have a rematch with you again, how are you going to be able to fight in unification matches? Because you can't. You got to fight Klitschko. And if Klitschko wants to fight and you bail out of the rematch clause, you can get sued or whatever, you know? So it's a double-edged sword, you know? And we keep getting this. This is just the most recent example of this. But in every division, the same thing is happening. And it's been happening for years. And all we do is complain about why we not getting the undisputed champion is because it's not going to work. It can't work. It can't work. Because in order to get these big fights, most likely you're going to have to sign something in that contract, whereas you got to fight this guy again if it doesn't go the A-side fighter's way or whatever. You know? So how are you going to get it? You know, and it's just not going to work. You know, it's just not going to work. Look at the other guys that's holding titles. Joseph Parker, he has to fight Fury. He has to fight him. You know, Fury backed out. Okay, Joseph Parker beat his old sparring partner. All right, didn't look impressive. You know, I don't know if Fury was faking it or whatever, but it's a common thing in a heavyweight division. Guys pull out a fight, say they have an injury. You know, it's becoming a common thing. You know, even Triple G and then Jacobs, after that fight, they were saying, oh, he's not fighting anyone because he's pulling out because of injury. And then you find out later that these guys already signed a contract to fight Canelo. You don't know who to believe anymore when they pull out of a fight because of an injury, because because it's so common now. It's the easiest way to get out of a fight, you know. And I'm sure they're gonna go to a real doctor to cover themselves and get some kind of note from a doctor that shows that they have a true injury. But Joseph Parker, from the last fight he just had last week, he didn't look that impressive, you know. He looked okay, you know, but that's a guy that he should have stopped. You know, he was dominant for 12 rounds, but he should have stopped that guy. And now Fury's coming out, he's coming out and saying, look, I have proof that I was really injured. I want to fight Parker. You're not just going to go past me. But most cases, when we see an injury occur, the guy doesn't end up fighting that guy. The champion ends up going to fight someone else, and that's the end of that. You know, we never get that fight. But Parker didn't look good, so I'm sure Fury probably wants to fight him, because I've even seen fans, I've seen people in the comments saying, oh, Fury would have won that fight if he had fought Parker. Parker didn't look impressive that night, you know? And you know that's going to back of head. Oh, no, you're not going to get away from me. I'm going to fight this guy, because now I seen his fight that he had with his old sparring partner. He didn't look that impressive. I could probably be. But you know what? I can't prove that. All right? That's just my opinion. Okay? That's just my opinion. I don't know. Maybe the guy was really injured and he really wanted his shot. It's very possible. But you got to understand, it's been happening. It's so common for guys to pull out a fight that they're not sure that they could win at the last minute and say they have an injury. You know, because they say that, they make that claim, and the fight never goes anywhere. You know, and then you have Wilder, who is fighting Bermane Stiverne. Stiverne wants his shot. You know, all of this is coming out since the Joshua fight with Klitschko. You know, nobody wants to see Wilder fight Stiverne again. None of us want to see it. But Stiverne is pressing and he's making Wilder fight again, you know. He wants that shot. He has no choice. Wilder might have no choice. But the question is, what I'm saying and what I said in my other video is, how did Stiverne immediately become the mandatory for Wilder's belt if he wasn't even fighting since he lost to Wilder? He lost to Wilder 2 years ago, over 2 years ago. And he had one fight since then against a guy that's not even ranked high. You know, against a guy that is a solid fighter, but, you know, he's taking losses to a lot of other heavyweights. How did he get his shot as a mandatory over Luis Ortiz, who is the number 2? How did Stiverne sneak back in front of Luis Ortiz? This is the problem I have with the sanctioning body, and this is another reason on why, you know, this is, and you know, I've already spoke on this before. I really feel the sanctioning bodies put certain people in certain areas to protect fighters. All right. And I think, you know, I don't know if it's a fighter. I don't know if it's a promoter. I don't know who it is. But why is Stiverne there? Who made that? You know, I don't know who's pulling the strings to make, is it Don King? Who is pulling the strings? You know, I think sometimes they're because they're protecting the fighter that is the champion and giving them a reason to fight a bum. Manny Pacquiao, Jeff Horn, you know, example. Why are these guys, who do these guys beat? If you look at the rankings, there's guys that's below them that has done way more, much more, and they're under the mandatory guy. You know, if you look at every sanctioned body, you'll look like, all right, look at this guy. Look at Stiverne's resume and look at Luis Ortiz. You know, Luis Ortiz has done more already in his career than Stiverne. Stiverne, if you take out Areola, there's nothing else there. You know, there's nothing else there. Luis Ortiz has been more active. He's been fighting better fighters. Stiverne's best fight was against Wilder, in which he lost, clearly. Regardless if he felt he was dehydrated in that video or not. I mean, in that fight or not. So, it's just a mess right now because none of these guys right now can do what they want to do. You know, most likely Joshua is going to have to vacate one of those belts. So he's not going to be undisputed now and it's going to get passed along. And Wilder has to fight, most likely going to have to fight Stiverne. He's going to have to. If Stiverne wants to fight, he's going to have to fight Stiverne. You know? I think it's ridiculous Stiverne is there, but he's going to have to do it because if he doesn't do it, they're going to strip him. And if Wilder doesn't have a belt, He doesn't have that leverage to make fights, the fights that he wants. It's all messed up in full circle. Nobody wants to see, at least, I don't want to say nobody, but I don't want to see Joshua fight, Joseph Parker fight Hughie Fury. I don't think Fury is good. I think Tyson Fury is great, but I don't think his cousin is good at all. That's just my personal opinion, but people are not asking for it. Most people want to see Joseph Parker fight another top heavyweight. Fury is not a top heavyweight. Tyson is, but not Hughie. He's not that good. He's not that good in my opinion, you know? So what do these guys do from here? You know, it's just, how do you become undisputed if you have all these obligations to me? Okay? As a fighter, you can get derailed from picking up that last title by fighting the superstar of that division or whatever, you know, whether it's at a catch weight or whether that person is in a different division. How do you become undisputed when the opportunity usually comes when you're not trying to be, when you're trying to become undisputed, but you don't want to miss out on a great opportunity? We all know that Golovkin should be fighting Billy Joe Saunders. He's one fight away from becoming undisputed. All he has to do is fight this one guy. But Canelo and Team Golden Boy want that fight now. You know, a lot of us thought that Canelo, I personally didn't believe Canelo was going to fight Golovkin next. You know, I thought for a moment after Golovkin fight with Jacobs that he would now, because Golovkin looked vulnerable in this fight. And this is why a lot of people came and called out Golovkin, people that have ducked him in the past, including Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders. I thought these guys were just calling him out because, or willing to fight him now because Golovkin looked very vulnerable in his last match. A lot of people think Jacobs won that fight, you know. So if you're Golovkin, I can see why he doesn't want to fight Saunders right now, even though he wants to become undisputed. You got to understand, these fighters care more about the money and getting that big, huge opportunity. It's easy for me, that's a guy that's not boxing, that's on the outside, the fan, for me to say, you know what, Canelo ducked you before, so you duck, you know, well, not duck him, but you pass up on that opportunity to fight him, to go and pick up that last belt from Billy Joe Saunders. Go fight Saunders now and fight Canelo later. It's not going to happen that way, because if you pass up on Canelo, who is a cash cow of boxing right now, he's probably going to take Saunders over you anyway. You don't fight him because you try to fight with Saunders. Saunders and his team is going to be like, no, I'm not going to fight you. I'm going to fight Canelo, you know, or somebody else that's, you know, whatever, you know, he could go, Canelo could go, I don't know. But, you know, if you look at everybody, even Ward and Kovalev was one belt away from being undisputed. And Stevenson, well, you got to look at both of them, because Stevenson was, all he had to do, both Kovalev and Stevenson had to do was fight each other, and they would have been undisputed. Stevenson held one belt, the WBC, for years now, and Kovalev has held 3 titles for a couple of years now. And these guys never fought each other. They've had several fights since they both held, you know, the remaining belts in that division. You know, Kovalev had 3, you know, 2 for a while, then Fort Hopkins held 3. Stevenson held the WBC, and these guys never fought each other. And then Stevenson wanted Andre Ward after he beat Kovalev. But you know what? Ward is obligated to fight Kovalev again because of that rematch clause. And he has to execute this rematch clause. And when Ward has been asked about possibly fighting Stevenson, and he didn't seem to have any interest in fighting Adonis Stevenson. He had no interest. When he was asked about Adonis Stevenson, he's like, yeah, now Stevenson wants to come out and blah, blah, blah. He doesn't have any interest in fighting Adonis Stevenson, you know? And I doubt he has any interest after this rematch, win or lose. If he wins against Kovalev again, I doubt he's going to have any interest. Why? I have no idea. This is why we're not getting an undisputed champion, because these guys are so close to becoming undisputed, and it just doesn't happen. Just like that. It doesn't happen. These boxers don't have any interest. These titles are there to have leverage in choosing who you want to fight. Because if you don't have a title and you're not that big of a name, you're gonna be looked over. You know, especially if you're good. People are gonna look right over you. These fighters are gonna look right over you. Even if you have a title, there's two, three other options you can make. You know, why fight you if I could fight this guy? He holds a title too. Undisputed champions is not going to happen. It's not going to happen anytime soon, especially in the heavyweight division. It's not going to happen. No way. Because Joshua is already talking about fighting two guys that don't have titles. He's unified. He has to fight one of the guys or vacate. And they're talking about having a Klitschko rematch and having a Tyson Fury match, which are both good fights. Listen, I'm all about rematches. I'm cool with rematches as long as it's a legit rematch. If it was a close battle between you and another fighter, then fine. You know, I'm fine with that. You know, even when Mayweather fought Maidana, you know what it is? I understood. I didn't want to see it because I want Floyd to fight some of these other guys in the welterweight division. There was so many other guys that I wanted to see him face. Instead of seeing him face a guy he already got a win over. But I understand, like, okay, you know what? That fight was razor sharp close, in my opinion. It could have gone either way. That was the first fight since Castillo that Floyd looked like he almost lost. You know? So that's why that rematch happened. You know, and I honestly don't see, you know, I'm trying to think of any other division. You know, honestly, right now, I just don't see, anytime there's a fighter that gets close to collecting maybe 2 or holds 2 or 3 belts, or they don't go after that 4th belt. They don't go after those remaining belts. They just don't do it. And nobody really wants it. The fighters don't want it. All right, because maybe that 4th belt, that last belt they need to collect, is a little too dangerous for them at that moment because they don't want to lose everything. So they'll fight somebody else instead. All right. Then you have the sanctioning bodies who really don't want an undisputed champion. All right. Plus the fighters. Oh, and I forgot the point that a lot of the fighters don't want to pay those sanctioning fees. You know, Miguel Cotto, you know, when he was doing his whole thing up there with the WBC, he didn't want to pay those sanctioning fees. You know, Floyd Mayweather, you know, he was another guy that vacated. I believe he vacated or opted out a belt a couple of times in the welterweight division because he didn't want to pay the sanctioning fees. As much money as he has, he still doesn't want to pay it. A lot of fighters just don't want to deal with it. And if you do win, like Tyson Fury did, if he won 3 titles at one time, immediately he had to fight. He had to fight Klitschko. And guess what? The sanctioning body wasn't playing that. They stripped him right away. They stripped him like a week after he fought and beat Klitschko. How do you become undisputed? If the fighter has better opportunities than defending all 3 titles, you know, and keeping all 3 titles. If you have a better opportunity out there as far as money or beating someone that's famous, how do you take that fight? Most likely you're going to get stripped regardless. There's no way you can hold all 4 unless all sanctioning bodies agree to be lenient for that particular fighter. I'm trying to think of ways. It's more tougher than for me now to think of a way to be undisputed. How do you do it? Because if you don't sign a rematch clause to some of these fights, you're not going to get the fight. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You know? I just think, like, these fighters and these titles at this point in the game, they're just being used to give you leverage, you know? Look at the sanctioned bodies now. Look at the WBC. They make up titles in fights. They create new titles for certain fights. You know? The Intercontinental Argentinian WBC, they make some crazy new title for certain fights. You know, that's just how it is. The titles have no value. Look how easy, and then you got fighters that will easily give up their title and they'll have just one title. You know? Look how easy it was for Canelo to say, "Hey, take the WBC title." Look how easy it was for Peter Quillen to just give up his title. He gave up his title, you know, just because he didn't want to fight Korobov. You know, look how easy it is for fighters to just let the titles go. They have no value. You know, they don't. And I, you know, listen, and I don't care who you're riding with. It doesn't matter who side you on when it comes to this. It doesn't matter if you're riding with the black fighter, the white fighter. It doesn't matter if you're riding with the PBC or the HBO fighter. It doesn't matter which way you go with it. It's the same thing. No matter where you go with it, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter which side you on. Everybody, you know, they think it's about size. They all doing it. They all doing it. HBO does it with their fighters. The WBC does it with their fighters. The IBF, all of them. They pick and choose when they want to enforce their rules. All right? And they'll change it up for certain fighters. Because it's all about who brings in the money. And it's about that in life. It's about who's bringing the money and how are we going to get money out of this? Because the sanctioning bodies are looking at it like, yo, if this guy has all 4 belts, I really don't believe any of them want any boxer to really be undisputed. Because right before, when they're just close of getting undisputed, they're willing to strip you away, right away. When's the last time we had an undisputed champ? It's not going to happen. You're going to get stripped of something before then. To me, you know what's more important than being being undisputed? And I've always said in my videos, I want to see an undisputed champ. But reality is you got to look at reality. You got to look at the facts. So you got to look at the way things are going historically and more or less recently. Everybody is getting stripped, or everybody's vacating, or everybody's going to pick the cash cow first. You have one title. I don't care how many titles. It's about who you're fighting. If you're fighting good quality fighters regularly, then I'm cool. You stick to doing that, I'm cool with that. You know, if I could look at your resume and say, you know what, you fought all of these guys right here, I respect you. You know, if you're doing that, that's fine. It's not too many fighters that's doing that. And if they were doing it at one point, they changed because they became the top dog. And now they're picking and choosing who they want to fight. I like Errol Spence because he seems promising. He seems like he's going to be that way even if he becomes a champion. Regardless of how I feel about who I think is going to win that Kell Brook fight, I like what Errol Spence is saying. And I think he's serious about it. I don't know. He doesn't seem like a flashy dude. I mean, people do change. But he's adamant about fighting Keith Thurman after he wins this title. And I think if he were to beat Kell Brook and if he were to go and beat Keith Thurman, I think he's going to hunt down Pacquiao. I believe him. You know, I don't see no fear in him. You know? I mean, he might be over his head in this fight coming up and everything. But, yo, if he's not and if he does beat Kell Brook, I don't think he's going to hide out somewhere and just chill. No, he's going to be trying to come after all of these guys. And that's how it is in the UFC. And this is why in UFC, these guys got nothing but losses on their record. You know why? Because if you're number two, if you're the number one mandatory for a title in that division in the UFC, it's because you beat everybody in the top 10. You know? Or you beat the guy that beat the other guys. You moved up in rank. There's no funny games like this whole Stevenson thing and Ortiz thing. There's no funny games when it comes to that. There's no funny business. It's you became, if you're at number 2, it's because you probably beat the number 9 guy. You probably beat the number 5 guy. You probably beat the number 4 guy. And then now they put you at number 2. That's how it works in the UFC. But in boxing, you could just magically appear. You know, or you could just magically get removed. You could be the last boxer. We all know this. We talk about this all the time, guys. We know how it is. The sanctioning bodies, they pick and choose what they want to do. They manipulate the game. And we sitting here arguing about what should be what. Undisputed is done. It's done. It's dead. At this point, just be happy with the good matchups. Get the good matchups popping, you know. Get the guys that deserve a title shot their shot. And that's it. Shut up. It shouldn't be nothing more than that. Anything else, Undisputed, you know, if we can get it, then fine. That's cool. It's not the same game. I mean, back then, historically, most of the time, you became undisputed by beating one person. Now, you had to work your way to get in that shot. But when you got the shot, you beat one guy and you was undisputed. Now everything is all separated because the money is not there like the way it was. We're not the number one sport. You know, boxing is just a side sport. And if you're a fan of it, it's like a hobby. It's like a group of a small fan base of people. Whenever I meet another boxing fan, like, you know, at work, like I made some changes at work and I work with different people now. And in my office, there are 2 big time boxing fans. One of them actually boxes, right? And they also go to the fights just as much as I do. And when you meet people that are fans just like you, it's like a big thing. Like you become best friends because it's so rare to find people that's really fans of boxing like that. You know? So now, being that boxing it's a secondary sport, these sanctioning bodies, you know, these promoters, they got to make the money any way they can. You know? Because they have to separate the belts. They have to make all these belts. And then they have to make regular belts and all these other belts, you know, different levels of champions in each sanctioning body in each division. You can't compare the history. We have twice as many divisions, all right? You have 4 separated belts, and then you have little subclasses of belts. And we want an undisputed champ? It's not happening. It's not going to happen. But I spoke on it long enough. I probably wanted to speak on different things, but it's so hard to remember everything, all the examples, you know. It's probably more examples I wanted to give you guys. But right now, as far as the heavyweight division, everybody's in a hole because everybody got a mandatory. Everybody got a mandatory. They'll beat that one mandatory and maybe, you know, hopefully they'll get hopefully we get like a unification match between 2 of the guys. But you see how it works, you know, because we know there's a weakest link in the heavyweight division. And Joseph Parker, unfortunately, he's that guy. He is the weakest link. He's the weakest one. And whoever can get to him first will. Just to hold 2 titles, just to have more leverage. That's how it is. You know, but Joshua, I'm not saying he's the weakest link, but at the same time, at least with him, you know he's not unbeatable. And now you also know that he's going to bring more money than anybody else in that division. You know? it's tough, man. It's tough, man. And I don't see us having an undisputed champion. And not only that, but in the heavyweight division, it's very competitive. It's not my favorite, the most talented division. You know, I still don't think anybody in the heavyweight division is a top 10 pound for pound or anywhere close to that. Not one. I think Tyson Fury would be the closest, but he's not a boxer right now. Hopefully he really comes back. Hopefully he gets himself together. But I don't see anyone in the heavyweight division being pound for pound. And I don't see anyone in the heavyweight division beating everybody. I don't see not one of those guys, regardless of who you think is the best, I don't see not one of those guys beating everyone. It's too many different styles in that division right now. And everyone, no one is perfect. No one is perfect up there. You know, you got some guys that are awkward. You got some guys that are just really powerful. You don't have the talent gap in the heavyweight division compared to the lower divisions the gap is wide. The gap is wide, you know? So anyway, yo, I spoke long enough, man. I'm about to go back inside, and I'll see you guys on the next one, all right? Peace.